Thank you for being here today. This is the Public Works Work Session, Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Board of Supervisors Hearing Room, 1415 Melody Lane, Building G, Bisbee, Arizona, pursuant to ARS 38431.02H. The public will have physical access to the meeting place 15 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion. Roll call. Ms. Judd, are you here?
I am.
And Tom Crosby is here, and Ms. English is not here today, and so we will just move right along. Members of the public may also attend this meeting via Microsoft Teams computer or mobile app or via phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714, conference ID 246-173-599#. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comment will not be taken. Today we have Mr. Fazio, and I wonder if you would care to introduce your staff that is with us today.
Sure. As you said, my name is Jason Fazio, Director of Public Works. I have today with me three of our superintendents for Public Works, Fred Nixon. We have Fred Nixon is over our Highways Division. Robert Hill is over our Solid Waste Division. And I have Joe Hutchison here, and he's over our Fleet Division. We also have our admin manager here for Public Works as well, Jessica Moore.
All right. Thank you very much. And that does it for, would you just, did you want to jump right in there and
Sure.
tell us what's on your mind? That
Yep.
would be a wonderful thing.
So this is basically just to catch you guys up on the quarterly work plan for what we have gotten done. You know, obviously we had started this quarter just a little bit, so some of these projects we have started already. Some of the things that I'll talk about are things that are on our work plan. So the first picture that we have up here is actually one of the roads that we chip sealed over in Sierra Vista Estates this year, Sagebrush Road. This was a really beautiful picture, so we just wanted to make sure we shared that with you guys. We did a total of 53 roads this calendar year already that add up to about 30.8 miles. So that's just since July. This is what we've gotten into. 53 roads at 30 miles. That's about 9,500 tons of chip and about 1,500 tons of oil. So the guys are out there cranking out the work, trying to get a jump start on chip seal projects for the next year. We want to get our ideal year is we get 70 miles of roads chip sealed in 1 year and about 140 miles or so of fog seal done. We did fog seal all these roads that we chip sealed, so to match the 30.88 miles we chip sealed, we also fog sealed all those roads, and where striping was necessary, we restriped those roads as well. There's a couple of things that are not on the project here that I'd just like to catch you guys up on. I talked about them in our last work session. We installed 2 new culverts on Birch Road. Those were done. Also, there was a culvert replaced in Wilcox at Airport Road. This last monsoon season, we had multiple fissures that we worked on as well. And we had a discussion kind of probably mid-July about how many fissures were out there. We counted 11 that we went out and worked on through our monsoon season. So diving into the highways Gantt chart, the work plan here, the things that are started or done are the shoulder repair on Mosen Road. We started that. The chip seal in Sierra Vista Estates is done. Hot mix on Martineau, there's a fissure that we went in and repaired out there. The chip seal on Birch Road and the prep for that was all done. We did that right after we installed those 2 culverts, so that hopefully that road will last a little longer. We put a little bit better drainage in there so the water can get from one side to the other without getting under that chip seal. So hopefully that helps us out there. The things that we have coming up are Davis Road hot mix. We've worked on it a couple of times and we have some issues with the hot mix pushing out. So we're going to go in there and try to work on some of the subgrade. There's some hot mix on Frontier Road that we're going to still be working on. Sybil Road has some shoulder repair that we're going to be working on. We're going to basically be putting gabions in there and try to keep the road from eroding on the downstream side of Sybil Road. We have a real issue with some undercutting happening there, and it makes a real heck of a drop off there on the edge of pavement. So we're going to be working on that as well. Mosen Road, we have some erosion control, a culvert repair that we're going to be getting into. And then Bisbee Junction Bridge, there's some slope repair that we're working on with engineering. Basically what happened was some material came out from underneath the aggregate or the concrete that's there. It's kind of washed away. And so we're going to go in there and break that up and try to backfill it with some material and then probably try to just reinforce that concrete that's there or something like that to that nature. So that kind of gives us an outline of what we had going, tying in from July moving forward with the projects that we have to do still and the stuff that we've done. The one thing that I wanted to mention at this work session before it gets too late, and we've talked about contracting stuff out in the past. I know you've had questions about it. We're looking at contracting the Sunsite subdivision for a chip seal project. It's way more than our people can handle, really. I mean, they could do it, but it would really be maxing out our workforce trying to do all the traffic control and stuff in there. So this is one of those projects that we would contract out. It's about 16 miles of road through all that subdivision, and it'll wind up being just under $1 million, right around $986,000. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because for us to get put on their list for this to happen in the spring, we need to start moving forward on a PO. So I bring it up in here so we can go ahead and move forward with that PO. Okay. So that's something that Public Works is looking at doing on the maintenance side of stuff. I think that kind of covers our work plan for highways. Did you guys have any questions about the highways work plan?
Tell me, what is a gabion?
So those are baskets that are full of river rock, basically, and we can put those up against the road. And instead of the water washing over the edge of the road and hitting the sand and kind of washing out that material, it's rocks there. So when it goes over that road, it won't eat that away, and it'll hopefully give us a better base there so that on the one side of the road, we won't have this big gouge after a rainstorm.
What's a basket made of?
It's usually a wire mesh.
I see. Metal.
Yeah, usually metal wire.
Okay, you talked about some fissures, and I wondered what causes the fissures. Is that just from erosion from the monsoons, or do we also have potential for fissures due to water level drops, or do you call that something else?
Yeah. So subsidence, yeah, there's a lot of different things that can play into this. Engineering would probably be able to give you a better idea of why these things happen. Typically, it can be from pumping the water, basically in the Sulphur Springs Valley, that's an ancient lake bed. So as the water drops in that area, we wind up with these fissures in there. That's the biggest thing that I understand is why it's happening.
Okay, that's all the questions I had.
Okay. Some of these fissures, just so you know, too, are in we have the Sulphur Springs Valley on the one side, and then we have the San Pedro Valley on this side, and we have probably just as many fissures on this side of the valley or on this side of the mountain as we do on the other. So is that all the questions you had for highways?
You bet.
Okay. Moving on to solid waste, we got a really cool picture there of our landfill compactor that we bought a couple of years ago. We just like to throw that up there to shift gears nicely.
So it makes you want to drive it.
All right.
I hadn't seen it before, so I'm glad you put it up there. And if there's any piece of equipment I've ever wanted to drive, I think it's that one.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is a great
that one.
machine, and it really adds to why we're doing so well out at our landfill, because the main job for this machine is to compact our trash. And so really, if you understand what solid waste is selling, it's airspace. And so the airspace is super valuable. So we run a report every quarter that tells us how valuable or how we're doing on compacting our airspace. This machine is what puts that material away, compacts it, and makes sure that we have really solid numbers. So this is kind of the heartbeat of the landfill, so to speak. And right now, our compaction rates are coming in extremely high. They're the highest we've ever had in Cochise County. We're averaging right now around 13 100 tons per cubic yard. So it's really good. It's Arizona, you know, you're doing usually pretty good if you're around 1,000. We're pushing 1,300, so we're doing really well. We're going to try to improve on those numbers because over the years we've made cell 4 last about 7 years. And previous to that, we were only getting about 4 or 5 years out of each cell. And at $3.5 million a cell, it's a heck of a savings.
Was it 1,300 what per square yard?
1,300 tons per cubic yard. Yeah. So basically that's what this machine does though. It puts that away, makes sure that that material's, you know, we're maximizing our airspace. All right, so I wanted to touch a little bit just on the financials because we didn't have this done at the last work session. And there was a couple of questions about it, but we can pretty much run through this. What we did here is we have a comparison of the previous year versus last fiscal year, where we ended up. We had 80,000 tons, 80,876 tons brought to the landfill the previous year. Last year, you see that we have 82,281 tons brought to the landfill. Now, some of that material wasn't put in the pit, but all of that material was material that we were charging the $64 a ton at. So if you look below in that blue band, you'll see the $6 million, the 6.309 versus the 6.497. The reason we have that uptick is because we actually took in more material this last fiscal year than we did the year before. Now, all that material got landfilled. I kind of mentioned that because we pulled roughly 3,000 tons of material out of that and we took it to Tucson for recycling. So even though we're charging for recycling, we're doing our very best to pull as much material out of that waste stream, not put it in our landfill, and we take it to Tucson. And that generates a little bit of extra revenue, which keeps us from having to raise our tipping fees. Our payroll, as we run through this, our payroll did tick up just a bit as we are moving our employees towards markets and getting the markets more stable. Operations and maintenance was actually just up just a little bit. Heavy fleet equipment operations and maintenance, you'll see a downward trend right there. That was because of fuel savings. So we had fuel savings and diesel fuel ran just a little bit cheaper than the previous year. So that's why you see that numbers down just a hair. The rest of these numbers are all going to be the same as they were last year because these are the heavy fleet equipment replacement. This is the money that we set aside for replacing equipment. It's a set amount that we put in an account basically so we have it there to replace machines like I showed you, the landfill compactor and things like that. The transfer out to landfill closure fund, that's something we're mandated to do. We're looking at, and I did mention this at one of the work sessions, I believe it was the last one, we're going to do a closure study to make sure that we're putting enough away in there. So generations from now, when somebody else is running this outfit and they have to close the landfill, they have the funds to do it. So we're going to do a closure study to make sure that we're putting away enough money. The last study was done about 10 years ago. So as far as we know, we're putting enough away, but because it's been 10 years, I'd like to revisit that. We have a scope of work with procurement currently, and from what I understand, the attorneys are looking it over just before we put it out there. The transfer out to capital future cell development, that's for future cells. So we talked about that $3.5 million cell that we have. This $900,000 that we do every year, that goes to contribute towards that cell development. The transfer out to capital, the transfer station improvement, this is monies that we set aside to go in and work on the transfer stations every year. I have another slide that I'll go into in just a minute, and basically you'll see where we're going in to work on the Douglas transfer station and do some reskinning of the building and stuff that's been blown out by people missing the door. Maybe somebody's hit the building or our tractors hit the building, or just pressure from the trash will sometimes tear the sheet metal. So those monies are set aside for working on those things. Currently, we're working with facilities. Facilities replaced a water tank out at our landfill, and that money for that tank will come out of that fund as well. So if you look down the total expenses versus our either positive cash flow or our loss, Our positive cash flow this past year was 177 versus the 203 from the previous year. I know that seems like a number that might be a lot, but it's really not in the solid waste world. Our tipping fees are $64 a ton, and we're generating $75 a ton right now, roughly, by recycling materials. So we might actually have to increase the tipping fee at some point if our recycled material is not going to Tucson and we're making revenue off of that. The other thing that can also affect that, and I will talk about it just a little bit, is ADEQ has a shortfall, and they're talking about passing on some of the burden to people that buy permits and stuff, and we'll go into that. But I want to make sure it's clear that you guys understand that we make about $75 a ton revenue, even though we're charging 64, but that's through the efforts of our recycling and trucking that stuff up to Tucson and not losing all that airspace. All right, the next slide is the transfer station rehab update. The scope of work is on Bonfire right now, and this is for the Douglas transfer station I talked about, the sheet metal around the bottom. We're going to do the bottom 10 feet, 12 feet. And basically that's where all the major damage is. The building looks really good other than the bottom 12 feet. So we're going to rehab that bottom 12 feet. That project's going to run over $50,000. So I'll be coming to the board for basically your blessing to do that job once we get the bid back on Bonfire. The bid should end on the 14th, which is this Thursday. This next slide, this talks about a proposed rate change with ADEQ. The ADEQ rate change is not set in stone yet. So we were told that this might be coming. We were told it might start January 1st. Because of that, we weren't able to budget for this back last year when we were looking at how much our budget was going to be impacted by ADEQ permits. So we're budgeted to handle the permitting that we were expecting in the past. This new permitting, if you look at this rate change per ton buried that I kind of calculated out, it's going to more than double. Now, it's not a huge number. I don't remember the exact number, but it's not huge. But it could cause us to be another reason to raise a tipping fee. As we see all these little things changing, where our market rates are changing with our employees, markets, salary adjustments. And then we have things like this rehab that we're doing to our transfer stations. We have these rates that could be changing with ADEQ. And then the final thing is the closure study that I talked about. So with those things, we could be coming back to the board for an increase in rates at some point in time in the near future.
Won't that depend on the cost of trucking, the cost, whatever you're receiving for recyclables? I mean, that's going to also fluctuate, and that trucking could get cheaper,
True.
And the cost of recyclables could go up. I mean, that's you're getting.
True.
So if those things happen, then the rate change wouldn't mean. I mean, that's also in the formula. I just want.
Yeah. So the $74 a ton, and not to scare anybody, because the $74 a ton we're producing isn't what it costs to landfill anything. Right now, what it's costing us, or what we should be charging, is about $67 a ton, I think. If we were charging $67 a ton, we'd be breaking even like we have over the last 10 years. We raised the tipping fee, I want to say in 2017, 16. It was right in there somewhere.
After I was here, so
Yeah.
it had to be 17.
17. So we raised the tipping fee to 64. We've been doing very well for those years. But with inflation and all these other changes that I talked about, there's a possibility that we may have to change that, because right now, according to what we're collecting and what our expenses are to our revenues, we should be collecting about $67 a ton. And that doesn't count the ADEQ changes. Where our offset is because we're recycling, which is great, and we haven't had to raise that.
Please keep doing that.
We will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it transfer out capital future cell development, $900,000 for 2 years. So I think that you said the cost of the cell was $3.5 million.
Yeah, so the last cell, actually by the time all the change orders were done and stuff, it was closer to $4 million. But we figured out Okay, so it was 4 million. We went back and calculated what the last cells have costed us. And we moved forward into what the next cell is going to cost. You know, just kind of, yeah, we're doing a guess. I mean, it's basically an estimate of what we think it's going to cost. We think it's going to cost about 15% more than the last cell. Fortunately, the last bid came in lower than expected, so we already have some money in the bank to go towards that next cell. So as long as we still contribute 900,000, we shouldn't have to raise that 15% or whatever. We should be able to just keep rolling forward because we already have enough to offset that in our account already.
Sounds good. What is the majority of the material that gets recycled?
Steel.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep, we're recycling cardboard as best we can. That's probably our least, but we're doing aluminum, copper, anything that's marketable, we're pretty much pulling out and trying to recycle as long as it can cover our trucking costs or even then some. The biggest thing is just making sure it doesn't go into landfill.
Mhm.
And as long as it's covering our trucking costs that makes sense, we'll do it. It's just,
I understand. You don't want to lose money.
yes.
Okay, what is the fix for the lower 12 feet of the transfer station?
So the new sheet metal.
Okay.
So the
Like
contractor-
half inch thick or what is it?
It's real thin, actually. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it's around, it's probably 10, like 14 gauge maybe. I don't really know what
Mhm.
gauge it is. It's fairly thin sheet metal.
Like a barn,
Yeah,
like a barn siding. Okay.
yes. There is some channel iron and stuff in there that's been bent out. And so that's going to have to be replaced. And that's a little more expensive than the sheet metal.
Mhm.
The real expense is we have like 4 doors that are roll-up doors that are fairly damaged, and that's pretty expensive. So that's going to be what pushes it up probably from like 20 or so $1,000 up into the $50,000 range.
What benefit do we get from an ADEQ permit?
Being compliant. Yeah, it's something that's regulated. We have to do by the state. Yeah.
Mhm. Could you tell me about the costs of such permits? Like if you wanted to do a completely new cell and you wanted to kind of get a permit to do a brand new cell or the last one, how much did the last permit to do a cell cost?
I think permitting for the last one was a couple $100,000, but I don't really know. I'll have to go back in and look at that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that exactly.
That's fine.
I pretty much have the whole bundle. I look at what we budgeted to do the cell and then how much did that cost versus what we budgeted.
Mhm.
And ADEQ is feeling a shortfall. So that's how they make up for their shortfall is they increase the permitting fee.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Well, what do we get for 200 grand?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
A permit, great,
yeah,
you know?
it's not something that we can.
Yeah, the permitting is not all that expensive. You know, what's more expensive than that is the engineering actually going into that landfill. But the most expensive part too, on top of that, because of fuel is, you know, the machines being out there and moving that material per ton. Another way we're going to reduce some of the cost to the new cell is we have a machine out there that's going to start removing some of the overburden or the top layer of material. We're going to start looking at removing that material ourselves so that when we go into the next cell, we're not starting from ground zero. We've actually got 10% of the cell started. And that way, hopefully it'll leave a cushion just like we had on this cell for the next cell after
Okay.
that.
Is cell 5 currently the one that you just started using pretty recently? Is it paid for?
It is.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought so.
Luckily, nothing is financed. Anything that we have, everything is caught up, paid for. We're not officially in cell 5 yet, although we have put some material in there. I'll get into that. I think it's the next slide, actually. It's a couple slides away, but I'll get to that. I think we have about 6,000 tons in that pit already. And we're still working on cell 4 to finish that off. We want to make sure it's every little bit of airspace is filled in that one.
I see. Thank you.
All right. I wanted to talk a little bit about our free dump.
Oh, I have a question about the cell. So in the valley, in Phoenix, that area,
Mhm.
their dumps are built up like a mountain. Are our cells level with the ground, or is there some,
They're built up.
okay, they're built up.
Yeah,
But
they're-
not as high as they are in the valley, I guess.
They're pretty high.
Those are mountains, they're pretty high.
Yeah, they're pretty
That's so
high.
exciting.
They may not be as high as the ones in Phoenix. All landfills are engineered just a little bit differently.
Mhm.
But ours is basically as much as you see underground, it's above ground as well.
Okay, I didn't know because I'm looking at this picture and that, I don't really know what to make of that.
Right. Yeah, that's the hole in the ground, and it'll be, again, higher than that by probably a quarter more than that now, yeah. All right, the free dump day update. So we've accepted a little over 2,000 tons of material with the free dump vouchers. The grand total fee amount that hit to the system, you might say, is $129,756. On this slide, it shows a grand total paid amount of $22,000. What that is that's people that brought us more than a half a ton, and we had to collect whatever was over that voucher's value. Okay. All right. This one kind of talks about cell 5. It does say we unofficially opened it August 5th. We currently do have 6,400 tons. That number is probably closer to 7,000 tons now, because we sent this out a couple of weeks ago. But this is what it is as of the middle of October. So it gives you an idea. Cell 4 is still being utilized, like I talked about. We're still trying to finish that one off. I think just a week's worth of material that goes into cell 4 saves us about $30,000. So every week matters. Did you guys have any questions on solid waste stuff?
No.
Then we'll go into fleet. Again, just kind of a neat little picture there. These vehicles were a couple that were outfitted at the fleet shop. We talked about it the last work session, an auction that was going on. We had 13 vehicles up for auction, 8 of them sold. So the remaining vehicles will be put on the next auction. I think it was August 13th. We had the last meeting, and you had a question about what happens with the vehicles when we auction them and what happens when they don't get sold. So if we had some of these that didn't sell, there's about 5 that'll just go on the next auction. We ordered 15 vehicles for the new fiscal year. These are regular replacement vehicles. So these are vehicles that each division or department has put in replacement money for. And we've got them on order. They should be being delivered in the next few months. It's really hard to tell right out of the gate when we first order these. They start giving us delivery dates usually a couple or 3 months later. Grant vehicles, we talked about those a little bit at the last work session. The upfits on those are still being facilitated through the Sheriff's Department. Although Joe Hutchison, our superintendent in fleet, has reached out to the Sheriff's Department, and it appears that we could be assisting in that upfit situation now. We may be managing that portion of it. Basically just getting the vehicles up to Pride or wherever it is that they have to be upfitted, and making sure that they get paid and we'll get the vehicles back. They get pictures taken and we get those assigned, get them out there. We hired a person to do vehicle upfits in fleet just this last fiscal year. We anticipated this person being able to do a vehicle per month. It was taking us 2 or 3 months to get vehicles back from our upfitters at the time. And currently we do have 3 vehicles upfitted in 3 months. So we're kind of meeting our expectations on ourselves, what we expected to do. Our heavy fleet update, the paint truck was ordered. There was some, on here it shows that the delivery was going to be end of October. It has since been delivered. I think it was delivered a couple of weeks ago. The guys are still kind of going through it because it was a used paint truck. We're looking through, making sure it's all decaled. We're getting numbers off of it. There's some training that's coming also for the guys that's from the factory that sold it to us, the manufacturer. So we'll get that all scheduled up. Just wanted to touch base on that. Other equipment that was ordered, we ordered 2 solid waste heavy trucks to haul our trash. BDI Airport, they're getting a utility tractor. I believe that's for mowing. And Wilcox Airport is also getting a utility tractor, and I believe that's for mowing and controlling their weeds as well.
Mr. Fossio, when you say paint truck, that's a striping truck.
It's actually a striper truck. We're not done striping for the year, but we have probably 80 or 90% of our striping done for the year. Luckily, our older striper truck held out for another year, but we put some bandages on it a couple of times to get it through. We really anticipated that it probably wouldn't make it another year, but it made it until we got our new striper, so that's what we
Good.
care about.
Good.
So do you guys have any questions about the
I
fleet?
don't have any more questions, and thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing your crew down.
Yeah, I appreciate them. They're all great support. You know, there's a lot of new people in Public Works, and we've had a lot of people retire recently that had a lot of experience in highways. But we still have a pretty good chunk of people with experience in solid waste, but that highways, we're going to be having some growing pains, I have a feeling. We've hired a couple of new operations supervisors because we've had these others retire. But I anticipate they're going to do well. We've already got them certifications. Fred's working very diligently on making sure that they are keeping up with all their SWIPs and they're getting certified. Actually, they have certifications that never even existed before. We've got them doing some training that just they didn't get in the past. We're still pushing really hard on training in Public Works. Actually considering doing something with a person that would be like a safety manager or something as well, so that we can get people really just trained well, certified in just about everything we do.
Are the yards that, when you say people retired, is that mostly here, was that like through the system? Are the yards up in the north, or do they have some
So we have,
good knowledge, some
Yeah,
safe knowledge?
we still have a couple of people in the highways crew that have been here a long time, but most of our supervisors they've been around this type of work for a few years, but in the county as a supervisor, they're fairly new. And they are in the different road yards. So we have a new supervisor in Wilcox, and we have one in Benson as well.
I think the training's important, but I think those communities are really unique. And I found in the 8 years I've been here, because roads was going to be one of my, as Jackie knows, was going to be one of my focuses, and I was going to be really diligent. And right now I'm just sort of relaxing, but you're all lucky. But what I've seen is that as new people came, and this is from constituent complaint as well as an observation, is that it's almost like some things get left out. It's like, oh, wait, we didn't even know we were supposed to do that road, or, things like that. I think for me, it's more of a geographical awareness, or whatever, cartographical awareness, whatever it is, the roads. It's more of that than they can do it. It's I have a feeling they maybe are just missing something.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to get that done unless.
So our staffing levels are pretty interesting. So we've kind of pulled our staffing levels down to a point where we're just maintaining instead of out there constructing over the last few years. And our maintaining levels with what we're doing, we have to have a certain amount of staff to get chip seals done. And in the winter, we're almost a little overstaffed, but that's when we do our winter projects where we're out there cutting the grass around the signs. And hopefully we get some people trained on spraying weeds. We want to get back into doing that. But that's where all those winter projects where we're doing concrete work, we're getting ready to work with Jackie's group on the bridge. There's some areas at the railroad crossings where we have to change a couple of things. We're not compliant there. And so that's where we kind of throw that in. And we don't want to hire a bunch more people because we'd have a bunch of staff that's not really doing a whole lot during the winter. So I think we have a pretty good amount right now.
If you have graders sitting, you should let your staff run the graders.
The graders are running almost nonstop all the time, except for during chip seal season. Sometimes we have 2 or 3 graders parked for a week, and then they'll go back and they'll alternate. And those graders will be running, and there may be 2 graders parked over here for a week. And we try to rotate that around, except for during monsoon season, they're pretty much always running.
So like 4 out of 5 of my complaints are roads that need to be graded. And I just want to tell you too, thank you. Sometimes I don't even report them to you, and within a few days we've graded the road.
Yeah.
And so the people are just happy without me even telling you.
Well, usually the complaints start coming in, and I noticed this when I was a superintendent over highways. Fred may notice it too, but we have those on a certain schedule. And usually as we get right to that schedule where we're supposed to be out there, that's where people are like, my road's starting to get pretty washboarded. I'm going to call someone. And right then is when it's hitting that 9 weeks or so. And we wind up parking a grader right there. There's times where I know Fred's done this, but I've done it too. where somebody will call and say, hey, this road really needs graded. And we say, hey, you're on the same page as us. Our grader's parked at the end of your road. We're actually going to be blading it tomorrow. And it happens a lot.
Well, I think your internal reporting system is really good because a lot of people just go to you and a direct, they don't come directly to me. But still, the bulk of my complaints are about road grading.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're satisfied before I get to you. So that's kind of cool. Thank you.
Makes me feel good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if that's all you have, that's all I have.
Thank you for your continued diligence, Mr. Fazio and Ruth. And this meeting will be adjourned, and our next meeting is going to be at 2:00, and that will be Engineering and Natural Resources.